You're listening to the We Are Libertarians podcast network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com.
Thank you very much. Okay, quick question. Who here is ready to do something? Okay. Now, who is ready for something that actually requires more than just libertarian votes? Let's put it that way. What's your name, sir?
Joe Howard.
Joe, what are you ready for?
87 State House.
Where's District 87 for people who may not know?
It's a gerrymandered district. It is Zionsville, Boone County.
Okay, up north.
Right.
North by northwest of
But also Brother.
Okay.
It's all the way down.
So, northwest Indianapolis, kind of north central.
Yes.
Indianapolis. Walking in the day. Okay. You call a news conference because you got an issue about property tax.
Okay.
But fundamentally, what's your position?
Property taxes?
Yeah.
It's not working well.
Okay. Explain that to me, the press people. We're all showing up at your news conference. Okay, Joe, why'd you call us here today?
Okay.
You got 25 seconds. Make it good.
Okay. The state taking over the funding of education is leading to a single.
What state's always taking over funding of education? Just give me a point here. Help me out.
Okay, we're going to have a single school system in the entire state.
How?
Run by the one.
In 25 seconds.
Because they've taken over the funding, and now they said they had no money, and the only way they're going to save money is to take over more power.
So, how does that connect to regular people?
Well, I happen to have a very wealthy district, and our schools are going to go to the toilet.
Okay, not bad at all. The trick is, and part of the reason why I do that, ladies and gentlemen, is because if you're going to be a candidate for public office, there you go. I'm here today to show you. You go.
No problem.
I'm here today, ladies and gentlemen, to show you how to beat the price. That would be me. Now, just a quick little thing about my background. Why am I qualified to speak on this? Because in one capacity or another, I've been covering government politics at the state, local, federal level for almost 20 years and some change. Started as a super reporter in college, worked at television stations in central Illinois. Got my undergrad in television and radio at Northern Illinois University. Worked as a reporter for a while in Bloomington, Illinois. Then went to graduate school at U of I to get my master's in political science. Went back to being a political reporter, covered the Illinois legislation when all the people you read about in the news now were just in the state house. Went to work for the Illinois Attorney General as one of his media policy people, went to law school, went back to being a reporter, political commentator, worked for RTV6, WXNT, blah, 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 blah. So, there's my credentials in 25 words or less. Today, I'm here to talk to you about the rules of engagement. If you understand the rules of engagement, that's me and my little wife and two black people in the corner there. If you understand what I call the rules of engagement and dealing with the media, your life will be so much easier. Very simple. Rule number one, although it may seem like it, the media is not the enemy. Frankly, the media doesn't care because we have more stuff to do. What we are, though, is rule number two. The media is a tool. You may take that in whatever connotation. Now, you can use tools to build things. You can use tools to break things. It depends on, or if you're like a tool, you get the undocumented guest worker to get the tools to do for you because you don't know how to build anything. Number three, the media is lazy. We're lazy by some people by design, but also lazy by circumstance. I'll explain that in just a bit. Number four, you want to ask yourself, what have you done for the press lately? Why should I cover your event? How do I know this is going to be valuable or just going to waste my very valuable, precious time that I don't have a lot of? Number five, why should the media care what you have to say? And number six, yes, there is media bias. So what? Deal with it. Welcome to real life. But the media's not supposed to be biased. The media's people. The people are biased. You deal with it. So let's start with number one. The media is not the enemy. But here's what the media is. The media is looking for a story. Something with impact, something that's relevant, something we can easily explain to the people watching, listening at home. Because the dynamics of our business has changed just like everybody else's. The old days, that you read about it, you heard about it on the radio, watched it on television, then read about it in the newspaper the next day. That has been replaced by the 24-hour news cycle. And actually, I would argue the 24-hour news cycle has been replaced by the 24-second news cycle. Because now everybody's got a website, everybody's got a blog, everybody's got a web page. We're all trying to be first and get stuff up on the internet first. And sometimes I think we've traded, accuracy for expediency. So we need to keep that into account. What makes a good story? This is kind of journalism 101. Stories usually involve some kind of conflict. David against Goliath, people versus O.J. Simpson, or the Pacers. You take we look for stories that can be broken down easily, can be easily explained, and also stories that have a human element. How does this affect individual people? As much as you may want to go on about the discussion that happened in 1776 in Philadelphia, they're all dead. How does this, where's the human people element of this? We also like compelling stories because the media has to have an entertainment component to it because we got to get people to watch, we got to get people to read, we got to have something that's interesting, that people want to take a look at. Old stories are not necessarily bad things. That's why we always try to tell old stories in new and different ways. We've all, there's only so many, to be really honest with you, there's only so many Tea Party rallies you can go to. Oh my God, a bunch of people got together, they screamed they were mad about the government. And you guys did this last week. What else is new? Give me something new, give me something different. Hey, if you come to our rally, we'll show you how somebody almost lost their house because of this government. Okay, that's interesting. So we combine not only a human element, there's somebody there. We got conflict, you versus the government. And it's an old story, you versus the government, but it's being told in a different way. And finally, and most importantly, you want stories that are relevant. If you cannot, in 20 seconds, explain what you're trying to do to the press and why people should matter, why it should matter, you're wasting your time and the press's time. So you got to remember, number one, by understanding these elements, the press is not the enemy. Now, with that said, here's some other things you need to take into account. You're not in control. The guy with the camera, the microphone, the tape recorder, the recorder pad, they're basically driving the show. It's unfortunate, but it's a fact of life. They will write what they want, they will report what they want, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. So you got to accept it. If you decide not to talk, somebody else will be more than happy to take the space. That's why I always kind of cringe when candidates for office say, well, I'm not talking to the press. Okay, well, don't talk to your opponents. I have 20 hours a week of programming to fill. You don't talk to me, that's okay. Somebody else who wants your job will. Explain, explain, explain. I say this because number 3 ties directly to number 4. Most reporters are not experts in what they do. They're sort of like they're like doctors, like general practitioners. They know a little bit about a lot of things, but not a lot about one particular thing. This is where people like me, Jim Shella, Norm Cox, Kevin Rader, all kind of come in. Matt Tully, because our areas of specialty are government and politics. But when we try to put the non-government person on the story, the first thing we're doing when they bring the story back is like, no, that's not right, and that is definitely not right. Actually, that would get us sued. Out of there. Yes, I know he's a coke-sniffing liar, but you really can't say that. And also, please, ladies and gentlemen, don't pick a fight with the press. You will always lose. Trying to pick a fight with your press is like trying to pick a fight with your wife. She will always get the last word. You will lose, and it's over. Call it a day. As the old saying goes, never pick a fight with a man who buys ink by the barrel or has a broadcast. There's no point. Now, that doesn't mean that the reporter's wrong. You don't confront them. But as I tell people when I teach speech-savvy tech, how you say things are just as important as what you say. Which is usually if there's a mistake that you think is in the story or your position may not have been fully understood, you just call the media and let them like, hey, just want to, I saw your story. I want to make sure that I was clear in what I was presenting to you, blah, 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 so next time we don't have that confusion. Because a lot of times reporters actually they do want to get the story right. Because just like the politicians, all you have is your reputation. And once your reputation's gone, then that's it. So if somebody makes a mistake, you just sort of politely say, hey, I don't think I might have been clear. Let me just make sure we understand point number 1 and point number 2. Yeah. I know, the obnoxious radio talk.
I was actually just trying to make things because I think sometimes we get people wound up with that.
Yeah.
And we forget to be
And actually, we'll get to that point in just a second, which kind of goes to point number 2, which is the media. Like I said, you pick the connotation. The media is a tool. You can use the hammer to, put a bigger hole in the wall, or actually, hammer the picture. The trick is to know which tool to use for which purpose. What are newspapers good for, apart from lining the dog cage? Because they're so small. What is radio for? What is television for? What's the right use of the internet? What's the right use of an internet blog? Whenever I see somebody write on a web blog, I am shocked that people write like these Unabomber manifestos in small print. They're like 20 million pages long. But there's sort of a rule, now the internet's sort of nearby house, they've done the research. If people have to start scrolling, they're probably going to stop about 2 seconds after they scroll down, because that's not, the whole point of the internet is quick, succinct, fast information. And so if you're Ted Kaczynski and you got this sans serif 2-point font, thing about whatever, I stopped reading after the headline. Now, if you want to create a link, say, hey, for more information, download this, you can print it off, that's a little bit of a different story. If somebody expects to read something on a sheet of paper, psychologically, we expect it to take longer to get through and to sit down and to digest. So you have to know which medium to use. Also, you need to know when to hold a news conference versus when to just put out a news release. I always tell people err on the side of a news release, because there's nothing more embarrassing than what if they hold a press conference and nobody came? Does the candidate still not make sense? So if you're going to call the media and ask them to show up, there's some things to do. Like number 1, good media days for news conferences usually Mondays about 10 o'clock in the morning, because Mondays traditionally have always been slower news days. By Wednesday, we're pretty much in full mode, and never hold a news conference on Friday at 4 o'clock unless you're about to announce you're resigning or keep it tonight. Because that goes to the Saturday press. So Mondays, good news days, say bad news days for Fridays. And if it's something that you can put out in a news release, always say, just make that available, send it out. And don't just do the big established media. There are lots of, you'll probably find your communities like weekly newspapers and neighborhood newspapers that are just starving for content. Because can you really write about, that garage sale on 421, one more time? The editor of the small kind of newspaper wants some real content, so maybe that's a place you want to ferret out a couple of things. Also, you need to understand the difference between the news people and the editorial people. Please do not complain to the reporter about something you read on the editorial page. They have no control over that. If it's like most of these places, the editorial people are up in an ivory tower with no oxygen, the reporters are on the ground doing all the work. And all the editorial people are doing is just pulling things from the news story and then writing in the paper. The reporter has no control of the editorial page, and there's nothing worse than yelling at a print reporter over something his editorial boss wrote. Because you know what? You're really not going to endear yourself to that reporter the next time they have to show up. You got an issue, call the editor. That actually used to be my old joke. I always tell when I used to write something whether the person complaining was a Republican or a Democrat. Democrats would call me, Republicans would call my boss. The result would still be the same, still painfully important. And also, here's a thought, and this may sound weird, but it never hurts to reach out to what I call, quote unquote, the entertainment media. Oddly enough, Smiley here in Indianapolis, the Bob and Tom show, the local disc jockey, they actually do have an audience. Their audience is bigger than our news and information seeking audiences because of the nature of what they do. So what you need to do, and we'll talk about this in a second, is know how to craft your message to say, hey, Mr. Entertainment Disc Jockey, can I come on your radio show and talk about blah, blah, blah. Yes, I'm running for something, but I think this is something your audience may be interested in. That's a way of getting to know who another audience is. Good sound bites will always win the day. A good sound bite is usually 15 to 20 seconds long. So as you're putting your news conferences and statements together, there's some catchy phrase or something you can do in 20 seconds, we will love you to death. Because we like short, we like succinct, we like to the frickin' point. We don't have a whole lot of time, because we got a bunch of stuff to do. Guest columns are always a good idea, and if you get enough of your friends together, letters to the editor. Please don't do what members of the established party do. They have like 5 form letters, and they just mail them out and have people sign their names to them, because after a while they do start to sound like because they are. So you just may want to, if you got your supporters and you're putting together things, so instead of bullet points, for people to focus on, to know how to use the tools and use them accordingly. Number 3, the media is lazy. Why are we lazy? We're lazy because we're busy and we're on a deadline and we have lots of stuff to do. There's not enough time in the day for us to cover every story that is out there. So while you may want to talk about the water reclamation district and where you live, unfortunately, I got other stuff I got to do right now. So your job is to tell me why the water reclamation trustee is a better story than all the other stories that I'm dealing with. Because remember, I got breaking news that I'm dealing with on a daily basis. We got meetings we got to cover. I got my new Leon Taylor shirt, so I got it. Which, by the way, I got it for you guys. It's the red, white, and blue Liberty. My wife is here, so we're not talking. Thank you, though, for calling me out. Be proactive. When I say proactive, it never hurts to talk to the press, actually, when there's no news going on. Remember college? Remember that phone call to mom and dad? You only call me when you want money. Why don't you call me just to say hello and say how things are going? Blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? Us, the media, we're kind of like that, too. Now, this is we don't call asking for money. This is something that I come from a different political culture than my Indiana brothers and sisters. The culture I come from, it is not uncommon for the media to be friends with the people that we cover. I have friends in the State House Press Corps who would never have any sort of social relationship outside of the State House or government building. So fundamentally, that's a judgment call based on your own ethics, etc. I have found when you know people personally, A, you get a lot more stories, B, you get a lot more perspective, and B, you get it helps you as an individual know what's going through somebody's thought process. Now, there has to be a clear line that nobody's going to do anything to compromise anybody else's integrity or position, but getting to know people sort of outside of the work environment is actually a pretty decent thing. And also that way when you call with a story, it's like, hey, it's blah, blah, blah. Sure, I'll take this telephone call. Which goes to the next one, which is always return phone calls, especially when you don't want to. If you're a county chairman and you had somebody screw up big time, pick up the phone, say, yeah, what's going on? You don't, that's when you have to spill everything right now. Like, okay, well, let me see if I can find out what's going on, and I will call you back. Chris gets that a lot whenever I call about Ed. Just kidding. What's that with the Bart gun thing? Oh, excuse me? No, but think about it though, seriously. Because there's nothing worse, and I kid you not, than no comment. Because when you say no comment, you have now let the story get completely away from you, and now other elements will drive the news day. And you'll be that line at the bottom of the story, blah, 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 had no comment. So, ask yourself, is that the way you really want to do it? Never waste the media's very valuable time. You want to make sure that when you hold your news conferences or press events, you're ready to go on time, straight up, maybe not more than a couple seconds late. Or if you start late, let be because the media hasn't showed, not because you're not ready to get stuff done. And always give people plenty of notice. I found that 48 to 72 hours notice for a news conference that you can plan is always good. And then a follow-up call like either the day before or that morning, hey, we're doing X, Y, Z at this event. Calling people like an hour beforehand, hey, we're having a news conference, and not because it's an emergency, never a good idea. And also, think about the layout of your rooms. It's going to be indoors, it's going to be outdoors, you're going to have like a plug-in box. If you're going to have a podium, can everybody easily put their microphones on top? Because you want to make the media's job as easy as possible. Because somebody's worried about setup and acoustics, they can't really focus on the content and what you're saying. The immortal words of Janet Jackson, what have you done for me lately? When I say, what have you done for me lately, what was our last encounter? Was it good? Did everything go well? Was it a bit antagonistic? Because what do people remember? People remember the last thing you did for them. Or in my case, the last thing you did to them. So, what's your reputation? Do you have a reputation for being a good candidate, somebody who's on time, somebody who's thoughtful, who's well thought out, these policy issues and can relate to the regular people? Or are you nuts? If you're nuts, nobody shows up, nobody takes you seriously. Like I said here, no comment, what was your last encounter? And have you ever given me a news tip outside of government politics? Because that's a way to endear yourself to the press. Because like I said, we can't be everywhere. Hey, Abdul, I was at this thing the other day and they were talking about this, you may want to go check that out. Hey, thanks. So the next time you call me, with a legitimate news story, I'm a lot more receptive to you because I got something out of you. That's the way it is. And what do your press releases look like? Once again, is it limited to 1 or 2 pages, easy to read, easy to digest, I can just pull things from and cut and paste? Or are you Ted DeSantis? Writing a manifesto? Great. He's handing out his news release on the CD-ROM. That can't be good. Next point. Why should the media care? Please ask yourself this question, ladies and or gentlemen. As you're putting your positions together, fundamentally libertarians, so I kind of have a general idea where you're coming from on issues. But just because 100, 150 or so people in this room care, you got to translate into the other thousands of people that you are trying to actually reach.
Awesome, thank you.
So, what's the impact of what you're talking about? Well, Joe, we're talking about schools. That impacts everybody. Now, somebody comes to you and says, well, I don't have kids in school, why should I care? Well, number one, you still pay the taxes for it. Number two, you selfish bastard, when you had kids in school, somebody else paid for it. Always love it. I don't have kids in school, I don't care. Well, when somebody footed the bill, you're a little brats. So, okay, thank you. How does it impact them? And number three, and this is something I'm guilty of quite a bit, but it's because of the nature of what I do, is this issue purely inside baseball? Okay, so in the 2nd district of the Libertarian whatever, there's an internal fight. And you're libertarians, if you're not fighting each other, I think there's something wrong. That's the nature of free-minded liberty spirit people. So if there's an internal squawk going on, unless this has got some major implications, say because somebody was out robbing banks, if it's inside baseball, it's just inside baseball. It's a great little, maybe a Twitter line or a little bit of blog fodder, but that's about it. So that's why you always look for the broader things, taxes, schools, etc. Things that regular people can relate to. And how can this story be told? Is it a print story? Is it a television story? Is it a radio? Just kind of one-on-one interview. You always want to try to target your message to the appropriate media. My personal favorite, media bias. Well, I'm catch myself up the curse here. Duh. Really? The media is biased. You think? But it's not the bias that most people think. There's a difference between the national press corps and the local press. And unless you guys are going to be running for president anytime soon, most of your experiences will be with the local press. The local press, first of all, like I said before, all people have biases because we are people. Our job as media people is to be fair, and give you a chance to tell your side of the story. Now, so what is the media bias I talk about? It's not ideology, it's more about passive. Media likes organization. We don't like to get caught up in a bunch of piddly stuff that doesn't matter, which means being organized, starting on time, having news releases with very few spelling errors, candidates who actually look like they're running for something, not somebody showed up in jeans and a t-shirt. That's the bias that the media has, because a lot of it is in the presentation. And I will argue, ladies and gentlemen, that well-run campaigns will always get better press than the ones immersed in chaos. George W. ran a much more organized campaign than John Kerry. Barack Obama ran a much better campaign than John McCain. Ronald Reagan ran a much better campaign than Wolf Mondale, et cetera, et cetera. If you really look at the media coverage, at the national level, or even at the state level, when Joe Long Thompson ran for governor, oh my God. When I lived in downtown Indianapolis, I was right across the street from campaign headquarters, and walking over for a news conference like the 10 death march. It's like, oh my God, you have to go listen to this woman that looks like Lady Elaine Fairchild from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, talk about that damn state of Lane woman. Yeah. Because they were always disorganized, they were never ready, and when we tried to broaden the discussion, they would never be willing. Well, we're just here today to talk about this. We're not going to talk about that. Okay, here's your chance for free earned media, and you're not going to answer the press. Okay, fine. Yep, whatever. Credible candidates are always look more favorably than people who are nuts. It's just a fact of life. Because you guys don't like dealing with crazy people either. And remember, you're on the reporter schedule, not yours. You're the one trying to get the story out. Now, this doesn't mean that reporters have a right to waste your time asking a bunch of inane questions, but if you call them, you deal with their schedule. And the other thing reporters like is consistency, not necessarily predictability. And when I say consistency, I know that if I call Mark Rutherford or Dan Drexler or Mike Cole, and we have a discussion about an issue, I know they're going to give me libertarian-oriented answers, but they're not going to be saying the exact same thing the exact same way over and over and over. I always like to say, Mike is a 3-trick pony, not a 2-trick pony. Generally speaking, then I'll be more than happy to take your questions. Number one, be truthful. At the end of the day, all we have are our reputations. So we have to be honest with each other. It doesn't mean volunteer everything. Just be straightforward. Be respectful, be organized. And here's the thought. If you don't want it to show up in print or on the radio, then don't say it. I always love the, well, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, all those people should be interned in camps. And, oh, by the way, that's off the record. No, it's not. Which, by the way, unless you and the reporter both have an understanding that it's off the record, then it is not off the record. I have very simple rules. If I have a drink in my hand, it's off the record. Spank will tell you that.
I have spent a lot on gin on this guy.
Yes, all the secrets I can tell you guys. But they're all about yourselves too, but they're all.
He's just kidding.
Yeah. By the way, you know what? Stuff happens. Yeah.
That's not stars for stuff.
Yeah. Stuff happens. So you know what? You deal with it. You accept it. Everybody's going to have a bad press day. Carl Bridges has been having a bad press day since. And I still love Earl like my little brother, but sometimes you just need to shut up and stop talking every 5 seconds. And tomorrow, and my favorite line from Gone with the Wind, tomorrow is another day. In any campaign, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So if you have a bad meeting day or a bad press day, just pick up and dust yourself off. And you know what? We'll start again tomorrow. Because every campaign has got the highs and the lows. Ask anybody who's ever run a campaign or run for public office or done anything like that. They'll tell you, there are days when we were sure we had this in the bag, and then there are days we were able to pack our bags and go home. So that's why I always tell people to keep a certain amount of perspective. Because in the universe, for every joy of happiness and glory, there must be an equally excruciating moment of pain and suffering. So people like me have stuff to write down. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be more than happy to take your questions. Yes, Mr. Shabazz. Timekeeper told me I had 10 minutes for questions, so.
I brought you a hovercraft story one time. What's going on with that?
I don't know, ask the hovercraft. Yes, sir.
With all press conferences and news conferences, would it be a good thing to go ahead and print up an overview and give them beforehand, that way they can, we're going to expect this. Then once they leave, they don't have to, dig out the video or record it every time they want to refresh it.
I have found when you do handouts at a news conference, people aren't looking at you, they're looking at the handout. So you may want to, if you have a media kit or something to follow, maybe hand that out at the very end. So, because you want the attention to be on you, not what you handed out to them, unless what you say pretty much mirrors and parallels exactly what you're talking about. So that way they can kind of refer back and forth. But I found that handouts are just distractions, so yeah.
Do we provide bio sheets, folders before the beginning of the campaign, or right starting out, so they know who we are, as opposed to calling a press conference?
If you are, I'm going to break my rule. If you are introducing yourself to the public for the first time, that's not a bad idea. And then, but just let everybody know as they come in, you give it to them not as you start talking, because there's that little bit of lag time, and the press starts to show before you actually get started. So if you're going to hand something out, that's probably the time.
I was thinking more of going to the office and presenting it to them.
It depends on what your relationship is.
Okay.
So, I mean, if there's
Yeah,
somebody,
no relationships don't bother.
yeah, I mean, just wait till the news event or, or find out, maybe I find out who the actual political reporter is who covers this stuff.
Okay.
And then send that directly. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Bill, from a local perspective, who do you think's running from a media perspective, I should say, who do you think's running the best campaign this primary to kind of shadow, kind of look, as you can learn by watching people, and who do you think's running the worst?
It sucks I don't have a drink in my hand. Actually, on the U.S. Senate level, I will surprise all of you by saying I am somewhat, I'm not really surprised, but I will give Dan Coates credit for taking to the airwaves and filling the void that his opponents just can't do because they don't have the money or the resources. Because, I mean, there's what I call the bubble chatter, which is people who are involved in politics, which is all you guys, we live in a bubble. And so we get caught up in sort of what I call the echo chamber of, I can't believe that he didn't get the Mishawaka 9/11 Tea Party people endorsement, all the rest of the crap that nobody cares about. Scheme of things, we live outside the bubble. So for most people who have a life, the only thing they'll learn about you is on television. So at least when Dan Coates advertised during the Amos Brown show, which for those of you guys who don't know is the local African American black talk show, Democratic Coast. And Dan Coates bought radio spots during his radio show. I was like, either A, Coates has just got money to burn like it's nobody's business, or he really is that senile. I would say, as far as the worst campaign right now, just so many people. I don't think anybody's running a really, really bad campaign. I just think that right now there's so many candidates that unless you've got the money and the resources and the ground game, you can't really break out of the pack. Oh, I take that back. The worst commercial was Dan Burke with the people from Ohio. And it wasn't so much the commercial that was so damning. It was his response. Because when the media asked him, well, why'd you hire people from Ohio? And it's like, well, I don't know. I just told me to read. I'm Dan Burton. I approve this.
How effective do you think a golf commercial is comparing Burton to an appendix?
It's cute, but will anybody see it? That's outside the ball. Yes, ma'am.
I'm familiar with press releases, so how do you go about the conference? How do you approach that? How do you know what events you do the conference?
Holding a news conference like rolling the dice. I mean, some days everybody shows up. Other days you're begging people to be there on the last minute. I would say the more global the issue, the more universal appeal, the better off you are holding a news conference. Usually mornings are usually good for reporters because you've got time that you're trying to figure out, the day. The earlier you are in the day, most reporters get to work between 8 and 9:30. So say you hold something between 10 and 1, you've got a pretty good shot of making the news. Now remember, you're competing with other stuff. So that's why I say Mondays, tend to be good news days. And actually, also Sundays aren't necessarily bad news days either, because where Sunday's news ends up. People are fighting and looking for stuff. One more question. I got time for one more. Yes, sir.
Is it okay to tell a reporter when they show up at your house on a Sunday morning and you're still in your PJs and you don't have time for an interview yet?
I've never seen you in your pajamas.
That's because I was wearing my coat over them.
All right, one more real question.
Abdul, what's the best way to get your name in the head of the reporter so when they think of a story that relates, that a libertarian can comment on, they know to call you as a candidate? What's the best way to get that to happen?
Make your executive director work. No, but seriously, what you guys should be doing is not only do you promote your candidates, but if your candidates have an area of expertise, let the reporters know that, hey, this guy's an accountant, this guy did real estate, so he understands property taxes, this person was a teacher or college, they have an expertise, in education or finance, because, like I said, it's not just, give me a reason to show up. Okay, you're running for public office. John McGough, was a physician, so that actually gives him a little bit of a different perspective on healthcare than, some of the other people. You know, Richard Bainey was a plumber, so whatever, I'm sure that matters. Somewhere we're not filing for bankruptcy, because that's what but it's still the truth. And that's the other thing too, that to always remember. People, there's a difference between political reporting and political commentary. And the commentators, which are the people like me, are not necessarily stuck in the same roles as people who are pure reporters. Norm Cox, Kevin Rader are pure political reporters. People like myself, Matt Tully, we are political commentators, which means, you know, we have a duty to the facts, but we can also opine on the facts with a little bit more perspective than everybody else. However, we have a responsibility, you know, to our audiences, no matter what we say, to be able to back it up with the facts. So when I write stuff to my web blog and gets people in a tizzy, I just tell them one question: well, show me where I'm wrong. Thank you, we're done. So, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, thank you.